You're looking to get to level 80 and you're not sure what's best. Hello everyone, it's Ego, and today we'll be looking at the differences between leveling through questing versus dungeons in Wrath of the Lich King. Now before we get started, a lot of you watching my videos aren't actually subscribed, so do me a favor, hit that sub button down below. So the big question that a lot of people still debate on in every expansion is, what's the best way to level? That question to me isn't just black and white, the answer is much more complicated than that. So in this video, I'm going to look at the advantages and disadvantages of each leveling path, whether you're going to be doing questing all the way up to 80, or grinding your way through endless instances until you get that final ding. Hopefully this video gives you a little bit more of an idea about what you want to do for your journey to level 80. Let's start with the classic way of leveling that we all know and love, questing. Questing is how all players will start off in World of Warcraft, and we all know what it's about. But this video isn't about what questing is, it's about what the pros and cons of questing versus dungeon grinding are. So let's start with the pros. First off, questing is obviously an amazing source of experience. That's a no-brainer. It's the way that the developers intended for players to level. That fact hasn't really changed in Wrath of the Lich King. The point is, questing can be completely on par with dungeon leveling in most settings, and sometimes even faster, because questing is done primarily alone. Therefore, you're not relying on other people. The only person that can slow you down is yourself. Another great pro to questing is the gold you can make from it. From getting gold for the cash in to vendoring any gear that you can't use from quest rewards, it's a great source of gold for you to get your cold weather flying at level 77 and other things that you're going to be needing on your journey. Not to mention, you could also get gold from looting all of the trash that you'll be killing during the time questing. This can also include random greens, BOEs, other things like that. The final pro I want to mention is reputation gains. Reputations are crucial in Wrath, especially in the beginning. Reputations will grant you access to different quartermasters that have a great starter gear or even pre-raid gear for when you hit level 80. Not to mention, these vendors also have things like mounts, pets, and other items. If you went the dungeon route, you'd still have to double back and do the quest for reputations anyways. Now for a few cons of leveling through questing. One of the biggest cons for questing is the travel time between quests. Whenever you're done your quests, you obviously need to go cash them in, which means you've got to get on your mount and ride over there. This could take more time than you think, especially if you don't have a flying mount. It's not as simple as resetting an instance, so this can make questing sometimes less efficient. Another huge con, and one that I'm sure we've all experienced, is competition for quest objectives. Whether it's kills, collectibles, or even something as simple as someone trying to do an escort quest before you, competition for quests sucks. This is more known for classes who can't instantly tag mobs like rogues, for example. This has always been one of the biggest cons to questing, is the competition with other players, where you don't get that in dungeons. Now for a more recent form of leveling, dungeon grinding. This is highly practiced in WotLK Classic and was a huge part of the Burning Crusade Classic expansion too. Dungeons have a lot of pros. For example, they don't have any competition or travel time involved besides getting to the actual dungeon. The only competition you'll ever face in a dungeon is on the DPS meters and the loot rolls. Dungeons are just straight up XP farms. Not to mention, dungeons, depending on the circumstances, can give you a very high XP per hour compared to quests. This is done through the possibility of 4-man, 3-man, or even solo farming if your class or comp supports it. Quests are capped at a certain XP per quest, but if you can manage to cut people out of your group, the less people you have, the more XP you'll get through dungeons. Not to mention that as your level changes, you can also start to get more XP, that is if your level is closer to the actual mob levels. The final pro I want to touch on is dungeon boss blues and BOEs. The gear that drops from dungeons is very powerful and has a lot of amazing stats. The dungeon gear will 90% of the time always be better than any quest gear you can get in the open world. That's not even counting the fact that if you get dungeon BOEs, you can also wear those or potentially sell them for a handful of gold. Dungeons aren't all sunshine and rainbows though, they do have some cons. The biggest con you'll find with dungeon leveling is comp dependence, especially if your group comp sucks, or the players in your group aren't geared enough, or the very best players. Your XP per hour will suffer. Now I know how some may argue that it might still be better than questing, even if you're a tad slower, but there is a line that you can end up crossing where questing is much faster than a slow group. The other con I wanted to mention is instance locks. You can only do 5 dungeons per hour and 30 instances per day. So what that means is that if you're speed clearing your dungeons and you're apparently getting quote unquote 1 million XP per hour, but you're finishing them in 5 minutes, you won't actually be getting that value because you can only do 5 instances. Whether or not I'm explaining that right, the point is you'll always have a cap for how fast you can do the grind, and you will eventually have a cap for the day if you grind it enough. Now that we've looked at both questing and dungeon grinding, what's the actual best way to level? In my opinion, knowing when to level by questing and when to level by dungeons is the best way to maximize your leveling efficiency. So dungeon grinding can be extremely fast for leveling, especially when you've got a solid team, but sometimes you can't find a good group or you've reached instance cap for the hour or the day. That's the time you should go questing. Or maybe you're done all the quests in the zone, but you're not geared enough or high enough level yet to push into the next zone. Go grind a few levels in a dungeon. Overall, these two methods have been tested and tried by many people, including myself, and I still hold the firm opinion that both methods can bring you through the levels very quickly. They, of course, as we talked about, have their pros and cons, but the best thing you can do is know when to switch from questing to dungeon grinding, and to always be doing something if you really want to push through the levels as fast as you possibly can. So don't just be sitting looking for a group for 30 minutes, look for that group and go questing too. Now that's all from me, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the video. I had lots of fun writing this one out. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and sub to the channel for more content like this. Thanks so much for watching, and if you made it to the end of the video, you're an absolute legend. Once again, I hope you all enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.